Hey everyone, what is going on? I'm Matthew Oliver, and this is Stillwater Alchemy, the podcast, episode 17, Total Eclipse of the Mind. Today, we're going to be talking about eclipses in general, eclipse season, what is it, and then going specifically into the lunar eclipse that we were experiencing on Friday, March 14th. So let's dive in, shall we? So let's go first things first. Eclipse season is activated when the sun is within 18 degrees of the lunar nodes. An easy way to remember this is that approximately every 18 months, a year and a half, the nodes change signs. So then when we are another 18 degrees away of the sun from the nodes, we are activating eclipse season. Eclipse season, it's always going to be an energy of beginnings and endings. Historically, this is often a time when certain rulers or leaders step down or rise to prominence. Even just recently, as I'm recording this, it was said that Donatella Versace has been stepping down as creative director of the Versace house, which felt for me like very much a feminine lunar energy stepping down, right? We also have here in Canada our own Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, also stepping down at this exact juncture. So if this is something that you're curious about as well, you can see it on a macro scale of different endings happening during eclipse season. And when we're talking about specific eclipses, like the full moon lunar eclipse that we're experiencing, a lot of clients will say, should I manifest? Should I do this? Should I not do that? Should I not do this? And it's oftentimes when we are moving through eclipses, it's very obvious when you just sit back and look at your life, what is ending and what is starting. And sometimes it isn't ending exactly during the eclipse season. Sometimes you're putting in your notice. Sometimes you're understanding that you're ending a lease. You want to end a relationship, ending a negative habit or mindset, and thus you'll start to see the beginning or the new effects of it later on. But oftentimes during that 4 or 5 week period of eclipse season, it's very much in your face what needs to end in order for that new beginning to happen. And so in terms of wanting to manifest something brand new, it's often advised during eclipse season that you sit back and wait and see what is coming up, what needs to end, because there's always going to be an ending where that south node eclipse is happening, or a restructuring or a death and rebirth for then something new to occur. And I often use the example of, let's say you want to seek out a new job. Great. Maybe going back to your CV, you're putting out feelers, but then near the end of eclipse season, your boss then quits. So then you're up for this promotion in this structure. And then you're going to have to decide, do I want to stay at this position? Do I want to maybe contact that manager who's now getting a promotion and leaving and see if I want to leave with them? Is this a sign that I no longer want to be here at all? And I finally have had the clarity of seeing my favorite manager, my favorite boss leave. And I am also going to take that as a mirror that I want to leave as well, whether it's applying somewhere else or starting my own business. I've always wanted to do it. Maybe that during that eclipse season, it came up that you actually just want to start your own job, or that you want to take time off completely to focus on family or travel or whatever that may be. So sure, there might be the ego or the 3D matrix, so to speak, forcing you or pressuring you to make a decision or to quote unquote start something new. In my experience personally and working with clients, it's usually very obvious where the ending is and where the beginning lies during eclipse season. Okay. Now, I want to also talk about this current eclipse that we're going through so we can see this more on an individual level. So for those watching the video format on Stillwater Alchemy's YouTube, we are now pulling up the lunar eclipse happening on March 14th, 2025 at approximately 2:54 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'm recording this on Friday, and I was going to record this podcast yesterday. That was the intention. But my mind, my head felt like it was going to explode. I was so tired, which are often symptoms of the moon, which rules one's body. conjunct the south node. And this is a common manifestation outside of eclipse season. So for the next year and a half, moving into mid 2026, whenever the moon is in Virgo, closely conjunct the south node, you might also be feeling painful, lethargic. I was going through a lot of stomach pain as well, and like working through certain foods and like, is this still a sensitivity? Is it not? And of course, Virgo rules the intestines. So and the digestive system. So it makes sense that during this moon transit with the south node during a lunar eclipse, that for some of you, if you're also working through lethargy, energy, gut health, wanting to restructure your health regime, your work regime, work-life balance, and you've just been exhausted, fatigued, that is just a very, very common manifestation of the moon conjunct south node. But then that gets amplified significantly given that we're in eclipse season. Now, this is also something that I find really beautiful that I've talked about in other forms of content before, but since I wasn't in a physical state to work yesterday evening, I was watching movies, and there were certain things that I always go back to in terms of TV shows as like comfort viewing. Sex and the City, Charmed are two of my go-tos, but it just wasn't clicking. It wasn't the right vibe for me. And so there were two movies that I ended up watching last night that were very, very reflective of the energy of this eclipse. The first one being a film called Monica with Trace Lysette. It's about a trans woman going back to her hometown to take care of her ailing mother and all that comes with that. And I found that to be such a powerful moon south node energy because we're talking about mother, womanhood, the body, and how that's all correlated within a family dynamic. So these are all such lunar themes and bringing up this energy from the past, going back home, taking care of an ailing mother. And we can see even within the transits of this lunar eclipse, the moon is opposing Saturn. Saturn in itself can also represent death and endings when we have hard Saturn transits to a luminary or the ascendant or the ruling planet of the ascendant in one's own chart. So if you have also been going through feelings or wounds around mother, around body, around family, around childhood, around a combination of those factors and how it affects your own safety within your body, that can also be one manifestation of needing to go back to do additional healing in that part of your life. There's even light spoilers about the film Monica. There's a scene in which the movie where Trace Lissette's character, Monica, is just feeling very overwhelmed emotionally and she leaves. She's like, I'm sorry, I can't stay. So she leaves to go back home. And then halfway through, she turns the car around to go back to take care of her mother. And it's just a really profound scene that, again, reflects the astrology so literally because the ruling planet of Virgo is Mercury. And Mercury currently is about to station retrograde. If we look ahead on the video format, March 15th, we now see that Mercury is now stationed retrograde. So there could be this energy as well that you're dealing with, specifically with this lunar eclipse of going back, of it being very mentally, emotionally overwhelming. We also see that the moon is opposing Neptune. So there could be a lot of emotions. There could be a lot of confusion. There could be a lot of wanting to numb or escape through different vices and addictions to not deal with the pain of the mind, of what you are feeling in your body, in your home. So that is another layer that could be manifesting for you with this lunar eclipse. The other movie that I watched is called If These Walls Could Talk, and it's talking about women's rights, women's bodies in different time periods in relation to abortion. So there's one talking about the 50s, one story talking about the 70s, and one story talking about the 90s. And it stars Demi Moore, Sissy Spacek, and Cher. And again, it's so literal how it's talking about the moon and the south node. And the nodes are a very interesting topic within the realm of astrology, and every astrologer has different opinions. But for me personally, one of the ways that I see the nodes manifest is often multiple timelines, right? So if you believe in reincarnation, if we're talking about the South Node, this could be energies that we're going back, that you are clearing out karma or you are agreeing to do soul contract work that your soul wanted to do, in this case, in relation to the moon and her domains. So, like we said, it could be around your body, your home, the divine feminine, mother, feminine energy, whatever that is. And that film is so intense. It's a really telling portrayal of what women specifically are going through even now. And I believe that movie came out in the 90s. So this notion of one, we can see where we are still facing on an individual level, potentially certain pain and restriction and purging and death and rebirth from multiple points of our life. So, depending on how old you are, you might be looking back at certain decades of your life and seeing where these themes around either the moon or Mercury are still manifesting over and over again for you to have a choice of, am I going to continue on or am I going to make a change? But then, second of all, and this might be a bit more challenging of work to do, where you're being more introspective and reflective, where this might be such a bigger soul agreement or energy that is coming to the surface at this time, specifically during this eclipse for you. So, to recap, we have the moon being eclipsed. The moon's energy is being stolen or swallowed, not being able to fully be recognized. And then we have the ruling planet of this lunar eclipse being Mercury, about to station retrograde. And we can see that Mercury is also very close to Venus. Mercury during this eclipse was at 9 degrees of Aries. Venus, also currently retrograde, is at 7 degrees of Aries. So there could also be a big part of this retrograde story for you in relation to the eclipse is you expressing yourself in relationships, you having to deal with finances, business, commerce in relationships, your self-worth in relationships, your self-worth and business in relationship to the feminine, to mother, to home. And so you might be evaluating, do you want to stay in this house? Do I want to stay in this city? Do I want to stay in this country? Do I want to stay in relationships to these people? To my lover, to my friends, to my family, whatever that is. And it's not even saying that separating is good or bad. It might be you going back, like Monica did in the film, Monica, to have to do some more work and some healing. And there could be fear around that of, am I going to be accepted? Am I going to be abandoned? Am I going to be embraced? Am I going to be attacked? And so it's just acknowledging that there is a lot of energy, even just moon opposing Saturn, moon opposing Neptune. Of course, this is a full moon lunar eclipse, so the moon is opposing the sun, where the moon is having to go through a lot of heavy, heavy energy. Now, she does have a trine to Uranus and a sextile to Mars within this lunar eclipse and a wide square to Jupiter. So there is opportunity through action, Mars, that there could be a shift in our emotions, Uranus, that can provide healing and truth. Jupiter. So there are still ways of using this eclipse, as always, in a very profound healing way, but your mental health, your mindset are going to be paramount. And this might also be part of your either eclipse season assignment or your Mercury retrograde assignment that's going to be starting during this eclipse, in what is needed from you on a lunar and mercurial standpoint to you to feel safe for this maybe neglected or unspoken part of yourself that you don't want to see, that you don't want to acknowledge because of the pain. And again, this might not just be from your current circumstance, this could be from other layers of your past in this timeline, or it might be different layers from your soul's perspective. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times when we go through something extremely traumatic, extremely painful, where it doesn't make sense, where it isn't fair, that there are some spiritual beliefs that your soul hasn't fully learned that lesson, or it wanted to learn this lesson at the highest degree in terms of the highest level of forgiveness, the highest level of trust, the highest level of expression. And in order for you to do that, you then quote unquote attracted a really traumatic, painful experience for you to overcome that, right? Another way of explaining this, let's say you want to have a beautiful body that's extremely strong, maybe very flexible, low body fat, very muscular, whatever your goal is. That's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of commitment. There might be a lot of doubt. There might be a lot of pain. There might be a lot of financial investment to get that body to become the best, healthiest version of yourself. But then you know that you can hold that level of health, that level of power in your body well, if you want to have that level of trust and being able to hold that level of safety, security, trust in oneself, talent, beauty, whatever that is, it's not likely to come easy because you have to be able to build the vessel, build the container for that energy to then be safe and for more of it to come in. So, on a spiritual level, you have attracted this really painful, intense situation to heal from it. And both sides are then mirroring one another and clearing and repaying that karmic energy, which I know can sound very woo-woo, and some people might not believe in that. But if you can take that as a way of helping to alleviate the pain and the suffering and the mental contraction or the stress or the anxiety of how is this going to work out or why hasn't it worked out yet, that can be another piece of the puzzle that often gets revealed during eclipse season and then specifically during eclipses. So the last thing I want to end off this episode with is just in terms of how you can best support yourself during eclipse season and during eclipses, right? So if we know it's going to be during a south node eclipse, like we are experiencing currently, if you're watching or listening to this video in real time, is that giving yourself more time and space to rest, exhaustion, paying attention to your dreams, what is coming up, that is going to be very, very important. We know that this is an eclipse ruled by Mercury about to station retrograde. I get a lot of questions about like how should I have a conversation with my boss, with my lover, with my friend? Well, I don't know your communication style. I know that working with many clients, often a lot of the anxiety and stress that comes forward is simply initiating the conversation or initiating a time to have that conversation because they don't want to be an irritant. They know the other person's going through a lot as well, but again, we all have phones, majority of us, or we have access to Wi-Fi or the internet where we can easily communicate with someone. A lot of times, too, knowing that everyone's going through some kind of pain, contraction, death, and rebirth during a self-node eclipse, it's best to approach a conversation with, this is how I am feeling, right? You're not attacking or accusing someone, you did this, you did that. We're doing it in a way of, I'm feeling this. And you can say this action, whether you understand it or not, makes me feel like this, or I feel like this when you do that. So we're taking accountability and we're being vulnerable. We're not just attacking. Because, of course, when we're getting attacked, instantly the ego wants to defend. So if you're going in there wanting, and the intention is to feel safe by expressing yourself and receiving clarity from the other relationship that you are engaging with, that's going to help you alleviate the anxiety because the intention isn't to attack or to destroy, it's to receive and to operate in a sense of clarity or truth or love or all of the above. And third of all, it is, of course, we're dealing with the sun and the moon, and with this one being the moon conjunct the south node, your health, your vitality. If you are feeling sick, you're feeling overwhelmed mentally, that you want to double down on your nutrition, on your supplements, on rest, on being in the right environment. You might also just want to hermit, not have to be around other people. If you're feeling overwhelmed already, that you might cancel or reschedule certain obligations, that you're doubling down on the resources and the tools and nutrition used for your overall vitality that are going to benefit you, including your mental health. So if you know that meditating makes you feel better, if you know that being in nature makes you feel better, if you know playing with your friend or your sibling's pet makes you feel better, that you are prioritizing this, that these are non-negotiables, right? So if this is something that you know is going to be very turbulent, then you're like, great, I get to schedule in more time in nature, that I'm not going to be on my phone as much. I don't want to be imprinted. I don't want to have my nervous system stimulated even more. How are ways that I can slow down and feel good about slowing down? That a lot of clients as well not listen to their body recently and be in a lot of mental pain and or physically get sick because they weren't listening to their body to tell them to slow down before. So if you're listening to this or at any time in a future eclipse season where you're like, I'm already feeling overwhelmed, but I don't want to disappoint my boss, my team, my loved one, whoever it is, that you are being proactive about this and even being preemptive and saying, I can only take on so much. I'm ready at my capacity. I cannot take this on, so that you are not overcommitting, that you're giving yourself more time to rest and to integrate. It's also like, I'm not sure if any of you have been on a spiritual retreat or where you're going to address a big part of physical, mental, spiritual healing. When you come back from that, you don't necessarily want to go right back into the grind, into the matrix. You want a day or two to integrate everything. And yes, that may be considered a luxury, but if you're really going to take this huge pilgrimage or this journey, or even just investing money to do it virtually, why wouldn't you then want to invest the time to integrate and see what else is coming through? A day or two is relatively not that long. And if you physically can't, then that's why I'm saying that we're delegating more time in the morning and evening, that you're allowing your, in this case, lunar and mercurial domains to be as best supported as possible. All right. So I know for me, I've been doubling down on meditations. My nutrition has been on point, and that's what I was saying, like really ciphering through like what makes my stomach feel good, what doesn't make my stomach feel good, doubling down on the rest. I have not been booking as many clients in because I wanted to give myself that chance to rest. And I know, astrologically speaking, that once we get to April, May, June, it's going to be significant increases because the trans just gets so much better, especially when we get to June. So knowing that May is eclipse season, it is a contraction on a macro scale, preemptively understanding that and not overloading myself was, of course, a wise decision. And thus I can trust my body, my intuition to strengthen my mind to then receive the goodness on the other side. All right. So I trust that this is all landing well, that you're taking new information on how you can use eclipse season to your benefit, how this specific lunar eclipse has been manifesting for you. Of course, if you want more information on how this can work on a specific level, there's plenty more resources on the Alchemy Point, Stillwater Alchemy's online community. I'll put the link for that in the description below. If you have any general questions that I can help answer, feel free to leave those in the comments below. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye. One thing as well that most can deduce is that you would want to look to your Virgo ruled part of your natal chart to see where this lunar eclipse energy is going to be the loudest. So which house does Virgo rule in your natal chart? Number one. Number two, is there energy around purging, releasing, death and rebirth, lunar themes specifically that's happening in that part of your chart? And like I said, this might not have to do with you specifically. This could be another loved one who's going through a really hard time that then you are going to support them. This could be a feminine colleague, boss, a community member, a neighbor, depending on where this is falling in your chart. There's likely to be something with your own divine feminine in terms of rest, receiving, intuition, nurturing in that capacity within those realms. So it might be, how do you best nurture yourself at work or in your community or in your partnerships? That gets to give you another clue as, okay, this is what this lunar eclipse is manifesting for me. So I can do the work in this area, and then tackling on the Mercury retrograde piece of, there's likely something for me to go back or to reflect upon in ways that I can be a better steward of communication, my mind, commerce, whatever that may be. Okay. So take that into consideration. Always for the eclipses, what sign is that eclipse happening in, and where does that fall in your specific natal chart? You got this.